Hello, and welcome back to A Real Horror Show. So I've been collecting horror merchandise and memorabilia for way over 10 years now. And throughout those years, I've picked up everything from action figures to statues, art prints, physical media, autographs, prop replicas, you name it. And ultimately, that has resulted in this horror collection that I have today. And although my collection is forever growing, much to the dismay of my bank account and the fact that I've got barely any space left, oh, the joys of being a nerd. There was of course a time before I had any of this, when owning a collection such as the one I have today was just a thing of my dreams. I know a lot of people out there, including viewers of this channel, have either just started getting into collecting, or they really want to do so and they just don't know where to start. So in today's video, I thought I'd talk about, in no particular order, some collectibles that I consider to be essential to a horror collection, and go over some collectibles that are certainly worthy of gracing your shelves. Before we begin, please consider slashing that subscribe button, and also don't forget to drop a like and a comment on this video because it helps me out greatly. Now, it's important to remember, in this hobby, the #1 rule is to collect what you love. Buy collectibles because you're passionate about them. After all, your collection should be a reflection of yourself and the things that you love the most. And if you already have a horror collection but you don't own some things I'm going to talk about today, that does not by any stretch mean that you should or have to. These are just my personal picks for things that are essential to my horror collection. But some of these things may be an inspiration to you horror fans and collectors out there for your own collections. So without further ado, let's get to it. And what better place is there to start than with horror movies themselves? In recent years, physical media has made a big comeback amongst movie fans and collectors, and it only seems to be increasing in popularity. And there are many reasons for this revival, with the main one being that owning physical media beats subscribing to the plethora of streaming services that are currently dominating the entertainment industry. This is a popular topic of conversation online, and there's a bazillion videos out there that break this down way better than I ever could. But in short, by owning a movie, it belongs to you. Not only does it feel great to have the actual movie in your hands and on your shelf, but this also means you forever have access to it and no streaming platform can snatch it away from you, just how they remove a lot of content from their platforms. On top of this, you can't find everything that you want to watch on streaming services, and the overall quality of both the audio and video is far superior on Blu-ray and 4K. But in terms of being a collector, you simply cannot beat special edition collector's releases. Granted, this can be quite an expensive hobby in itself, but when it comes to quality and content, these aren't just physical releases of a movie, but a collectible item. For starters, the packaging and artwork on these releases are generally stunning, and always have a glorious presentation. In terms of content, a lot of collector's editions are packed with extra goodies, from posters to lobby cards, booklets, even beer mats, and much more. This Book of the Dead DVD edition of The Evil Dead came out way back in 2002, and just look how marvelous this thing is. I own quite a few collector's editions in my collection, and I actually have a video showcasing my entire physical media collection on this channel if you guys want to check it out. And if you guys are new to collecting physical media and don't quite know where to start, there's a handful of companies out there that produce fantastic releases, such as the Criterion Collection that distributes significant movies throughout cinema history. For horror movie fans, there are companies such as Scream Factory, the horror-focused sub-label of Shout Factory, and the England-based Arrow Video, the latter of which releases movies that play in both the UK and North America. Arrow produce some absolutely fantastic standard and special edition releases of horror and cult cinema. So I'll put a link in the description of this video so you guys can go and check them out. Oh, and if you decide to make a purchase with Arrow, you can use my discount code REALHORROR at the checkout to get 10% off your order. I've got you guys. So something that I strongly believe elevates a collection to a whole new level is artwork. You will always find me saying this, but I can guarantee that my collection room would definitely not look as good as it does without these stunning screen prints that I have hung on the walls, especially these Evil Dead trilogy posters by the legendary artist Graham Humphreys. I've always been a massive fan of alternate movie posters and artworks, as not only do the majority of these screen prints look absolutely stunning, but the amount of style and vibrance they can bring to a collection room is just something else. On top of this, if you go to any meet and greet events or or conventions attended by celebrities, but you don't know what to get signed, screen prints and posters are a fantastic option, especially if they have multiple cast members from your favourite movies. I've accumulated a small collection of screen prints over the years, and from attending various horror conventions, this has resulted in me owning a few cast signed pieces, including these A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th art prints. I still haven't dedicated a full video on this channel just yet showcasing all of these various horror artworks in my collection, but I'll certainly be making one very soon. So when it comes down to purchasing screen prints, one of the best and most notable websites out there is that of the company Vice Press. They work directly with the artists and sell a large variety of movie artworks. This American Werewolf in London screen print that was done by the extremely talented artist Gabs is one that was distributed by Vice Press and is definitely one of my favourites in my collection. And a lot of artists sell their artworks directly, such as the one and only Graham Humphreys. I bought these Evil Dead trilogy prints and this Halloween print directly from Graham, and these are holy grails in my collection, mainly because each of these Evil Dead prints are signed by both Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi, and the Evil Dead 1 print is signed by a majority of the cast. Also, like I said earlier, my collection room would not look the same without them. There's also a massive community of people out there who collect vintage original movie posters and one-sheets that were created and used as advertising for movies upon their release. I don't own anything like that myself, but it would be an awesome option for artwork in a collection, as the original movie posters are part of that movie's history. Now next up is a horror collectible that as a kid I dreamed of owning. As some of you may know, the original Child's Play was the first horror film that I watched from start to finish, and it essentially started my entire obsession with the horror genre. And back then I was also first introduced to the internet and in turn the world of horror collecting. I spent hours online looking at all the NECA cult classic figures that were released at the time, and I also watched a lot of YouTube videos of people showcasing their horror collections. I remember seeing videos back in the day of collection rooms just littered with Chucky memorabilia, including life-size replicas. Now back then, the only replica dolls you could really buy was the extremely expensive and rare Sideshow Collectibles Seed of Chucky doll, which to this day still looks phenomenal, as well as the equally expensive and rare dolls made by the Japanese company Dream Rush and Medicom, or handmade replicas, which, you guessed it, are also extremely expensive. Until recent years, it was basically impossible to obtain a good looking replica of the good guy doll or Chucky himself, as for some reason no company ever mass produced such a collectible. That was until the company Trick or Treat Studios released this good guy doll replica back in 2019 and made the dreams of a lot of horror fans come true, including mine. Trick or Treat Studios have done a magnificent and faithful job here in replicating the world's most infamous doll, especially when you keep in mind that this is a mass-produced item. All of the details from the good guy doll seen in the movie is carried over, and my copy of this doll is particularly special as he is signed by the one and only Brad Dourif, who I had the honour of meeting a couple of years ago. So this guy is a holy grail for me, and if I did an in-depth review of this guy, it would take an entire video. So I'm not going to do that right now, but if that's something that you guys would like to see, then let me know. It's safe to say that Chucky is an icon of both the horror genre and in the world of movies as a whole. So I think it really goes without saying why a doll like this deserves a spot on the essential horror collectibles list. And even though he does cost a pretty penny, this replica is still more affordable than any other option out there. And I really could not recommend picking up one of these guys enough. And now we're moving on from one horror icon to another. That icon being the man of our dreams, Freddy Krueger. Since the 1980s, Freddy has been terrorizing people in their nightmares all across the world, and has since become not only one of cinema's most beloved villains, but a pop culture icon. And when you think of Freddy Krueger, you're bound to also think of his razor glove. I feel like this is something that most horror fans will have on their wish list, that is if they don't already own one, as this glove is truly legendary and as iconic as Freddy himself. And I know I've used the word iconic like a million times now, but come on, this is Freddy Krueger we're talking about, right? And this particular replica that I own was made by none other than the company NECA Toys, who have done a fantastic job at recreating this infamous glove down to the smallest details. This includes the safety pin holding the bottom of the glove together, and this break on the index finger. When filming the original 1984 movie, this blade actually did snap before filming, and they had to solder it back on, and you can actually spot this break when you watch the film. This NECA glove also comes with a display stand and can be found for a fairly decent price. I had the great honour of meeting the man himself, Robert Englund, multiple times over the years, and was fortunate enough to get this glove signed by him. I'm forever in absolute awe of this piece, and it's another holy grail item in my collection for sure. A Freddy Krueger glove, absolutely essential. The next collectibles I want to talk about are the things that I believe my collection is actually lacking in the most, and it's masks. I have a lot of friends in the horror collecting community, and I follow a lot of people with big horror collections, and I would say that the majority of them own at least a handful of latex masks. And mask collecting is a whole hobby within itself, just like the physical media collecting, but it certainly goes hand in hand with the world of horror. I mean, Halloween is a big thing, right? But masks can make for fantastic displays within a horror collection, and when it comes to iconic horror characters, there's so many that wear masks that you can buy replicas of, such as Ghostface for example, and collecting these Ghostface masks are also a hobby on its own too, as there have been so many variations and releases of this Halloween staple over the years. And one of the essential things that I feel is missing from my own personal horror collection is a 𝙎𝙊𝙎𝙎𝙎 hockey mask replica. The closest thing I've got to a Jason mask is this nifty little LED lamp that my mum got me as a stocking filler for Christmas. Cheers, mum. Over the years, numerous companies have released various 𝙎𝙊𝙎𝙎𝙎 hockey mask replicas, including NECA. But if you're looking for a high quality movie accurate Jason mask, I highly recommend checking out the website Fiberglass Masks, as this company produces incredible replicas of every variation of Jason's mask that you can think of. However, I do own one mask replica in my collection, and it just happens to be, arguably, the most iconic mask in horror history. And of course, it's the boogeyman himself, Michael Myers, from the 1978 John Carpenter classic, Halloween. In my opinion, this is definitely an essential item for any horror collection, as when it comes to different imagery in horror cinema, the mask of Michael Myers is a thing of legend. And it was so nice of John Carpenter to use a mask of the then unknown actor, William Shatner, in this movie, and give Shatner his first big break. Anyway, this mask in particular was made by Nick of NAG Studios, who makes, by far, the most screen accurate and beautiful Myers mask replicas on the market. This is a display piece that really speaks for itself, and it is absolutely one of my prized possessions, as this mask is also signed by the original Michael Myers Nick Castle and the master of horror himself, John Carpenter. As you can see, I've got my mask on a mannequin head to turn it into a life-size Myers bust, and life-size bust displays are another thing that I'd like to have more of in my horror collection. I do own this life-size wall hanger of Jack Nicholson as he appears in one of cinema's most iconic moments in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and this was made by the amazingly talented Tom of The Evil Shed. And if you want to see a more in-depth video on this piece, you can find one on my channel. Recently, I've also been eyeing up these Freddy busts made by Suckface Studios, as I would love to own one of these guys. And if I didn't mention it already, I'll be leaving a link to all these artists and the companies that I mention in this video in the description below, so you can go and check them out and support them. This Myers mask is a custom made work of art that looks just so incredible, and the price tag does reflect that. However, there are companies such as Trick or Treat Studios that produce very decent and affordable Myers mask replicas for all you Myers fans to enjoy. On top of that, the company are mainly known for their costumes and masks, and over the years have produced a boatload of masks for a wide range of horror movies. So if you want to start collecting masks but you haven't seen what Trick or Treat Studios have to offer, I'd highly recommend going to their website and checking them out. So one of the last things that I want to talk about in today's video is prop replicas. And when it comes to my horror collection, one of my favourite things to get hold of and put on display are prop replicas, as not only do they look fantastic, but they're just so cool to own. Technically, the last few items I've talked about in this video, the Myers mask and the Freddy glove and the Good Guy doll, are prop replicas, so it's no wonder why they are such a highlight in my collection. But I also have some other things lying around that are my favourite possessions, such as this Hannibal Lecter mask replica as seen in The Silence of the Lambs, another one of my favourite movies. Seriously, this movie, a solid 10 out of 10. And this mask was made by Fiberglass Masks, who I previously mentioned. What's really cool about this is, well, not only is it the iconic mask worn by Sir Anthony Hopkins, but the original prop in the film was made from fiberglass. Additionally, I have Ash's possessed hand from Evil Dead 2, made by Horror Show Art, and I put this on display with the rest of my Evil Dead collection, which also includes one of my most prized possessions, a chainsaw hand replica signed by the king himself, Bruce Campbell. And this little guy adds so much character to the shelf, as does this replica Necronomicon page that came with him. I did an unboxing video of this piece on the channel, so I recommend you go and check that out. And you should also go and check out the rest of Horror Show Art's work. He's a lovely guy and produces some fantastic products. He also rehauls Michael Myers masks. So if you want an upgrade on your Trick or Treat Studios mask, get in touch with Horror Show Art and he will elevate that mask to the next level. Also, if you want to see more of the prop replicas in my collection, I actually did a video on this a short while back. And it's really cool to see that companies are starting to produce affordable prop replicas for horror fans to own. Just recently, Trick or Treat Studios released their Leatherface chainsaw based on its appearance in the original 1974 movie, as well as this life-size Billy the Puppet from the Saw franchise that actually moves and speaks lines from the film. And I'm really hoping I can add this Billy the Puppet to my collection down the line, as much like Chucky, Billy is without question a modern horror icon, and this replica just looks so good. And that brings us to the final thing that I believe is an essential horror item that belongs in anyone's horror collection, and it's something that my horror room is literally overflowing with. NECA figures. That's right, you knew I had to include them on this list. Really, I should have just said horror action figures as a whole, but the thing is, NECA are without a doubt the #1 company for horror figures, and have been for decades now. From the old cult classics line to the ultimate figures of today that come with a boatload of accessories, and the retro cloth figures, NECA are the greatest of all time. I could honestly sit here for hours and tell you why I love NECA so much and the figures that they produce, but I'd be here forever. And also, I already look like the world's biggest fanboy as it is. Over the years, they have produced figures from a ridiculous amount of horror and cult movies, including many of the genre's most iconic characters, from Freddy Krueger to Jason Voorhees, Pinhead, Michael Myers, Pennywise, and the list goes on and on. And once in a while, they release a figure that may be a little left field, or bring us something that we've never seen get an official action figure release before. Additionally, the quality of NECA's figures just seem to be getting better and better as time goes by. The likenesses of the actors, the tailoring and paintwork on these guys are magnificent, and they make for fantastic display pieces. But even the old cult classics figures from way back in the day still hold up in my opinion, and have aged like fine wine. On top of this, if you're an in-box collector like myself, NECA definitely keep us in mind, as their box packaging always looks good, and they look so neat to display. The retro cloth figures in particular are accompanied by custom artwork that I absolutely adore, and I love how the ultimate figures can be displayed on a shelf almost like books on a bookshelf. It's definitely something that you appreciate more when collection space becomes an issue. On top of this, NECA figures make great collectibles to be signed at conventions, and I have many of mine signed by actors and legends in the world of horror. But in addition to the action figures that they are known for, NECA also manufacture other collectibles such as prop replicas, just like the Freddy glove I talked about earlier, and recently they released their own life-size replicas of Chucky and Tiffany as they appeared in Bride of Chucky. It's clear to see that NECA are a company that produce collectibles by fans for the fans, and throughout the years have released some of the greatest horror collectibles on the market. I'm pretty confident in saying that at least 99% of horror collectors own some kind of merchandise or figure made by NECA. And for me personally, the first horror collectible I ever owned that got me into this hobby was this 12-inch talking Chucky from 2008, manufactured by, you guessed it, NECA. So this guy holds a very special place in my little nerdy heart. But for people who may be new to horror collecting and want to get their hands on some NECA figures, there are a ton of online stores and retailers that stock NECA products. If you're in the USA, this isn't really much of an issue for you, as you can find NECA products everywhere, and I believe the main place in the States is Target. But if you're a fellow Brit, some of the best places to look are the online stores Nerds Toys UK, Figureland, and also Mad About Horror, just to name a few. But whatever you do, I would recommend staying clear of eBay, or at least have your wits about you, because there's a lot of people on there selling cheap, fake knockoffs of NECA's figures, just like our friend Zombie Ed that we talked about in the previous video. And honestly, I see people fall for this all the time. But if you're new to the world of horror collecting, I swear there is no better place to start than with NECA. So that concludes today's video. I hope that you all enjoyed my nerdy ramblings about what I consider to be essential horror collectibles. And I hope that I've helped some of you guys out there who may be new to the hobby, and also have inspired some of you guys who are already horror collectors. Please let me know in the comments below what items you would put on your essential horror collectibles list. And until next time guys, take care.